No fighter is perfect, and today's crop of UFC superstars are no exception. Some guys need better wrestling chops, others simply can't take a clean punch. And for today's video, we're looking at the skills and attributes that some of the biggest names in the game desperately need. Khamzat Chimaev. He is an absolute nightmare on the mat, a guy whose control is second to none at middleweight right now. And while some fans would love to see him open up a bit more with his ground and pound on the mat, if there's a bigger hole in his game that needs to be plugged, it's his striking mechanics. Sure, he has power and he's decent in a brawl, but if his fight against Dricus du Plessis showed anything, it's that he can be a little hittable and ineffective in the striking department. Considering how long Alex Pereira has been in the sport of mixed martial arts, he picked up wrestling and grappling skills pretty fast. But it's one thing to be a naturally quick learner, and another to be able to fend off someone who has been wrestling their whole life. And at the highest level, that's a problem. Tom Aspinall is an absolute beast in the first round. And so far, even when his opponents have moments of success, he is generally the one who comes out of exchanges having landed the bigger shots. But Aspinall does get hit, there's no denying it, and at some point, having such an open path to his chin is going to get him in trouble. His boxing defense in particular needs some work. Against all odds, Alexander Volkanovski has found his way back to the 145-pound title. But if there's one thing that many of his past opponents have in common, it's that they've all hurt and dropped the champ. Islam, Max Holloway twice, Topuria, Brian Ortega, Chad Mendez, Diego Lopez. They all had a huge moment in there with Volk. His recoverability is excellent, but at this stage, there's no denying that he has a pretty vulnerable chin and probably some deficiencies in striking defense. Ilia Topuria is a grappler by trade who has grown into an explosive but highly technical fighter.
Intelligent top dominance.
And after claiming the lightweight title, there's not really too much you can fault him on. At this point in his career, fighting against the bigger men of the 155-pound division, you could maybe say that Ilia could use a pair of longer arms, as a 69-inch reach is quite short. But apart from that, he appears to be as close to a perfect fighter as we have in the game today. Islam Makhachev is another supremely well-rounded fighter who is incredibly hard to fault. But in certain fights, namely his loss to Adriano Martins,
Big shot by Martins. It is all over.
And more recently, his clashes with Dustin Poirier and the first fight with Volkanovski, he has shown himself to be hittable. Boxing defense is something that he definitely could refine, especially with an opponent like Jack Della Maddalena in front of him, because if he does, he'll be damn near unstoppable. Sean O'Malley got well and truly audited by Merab Dvalishvili last time around, showing that his ability to deal with the champ's onslaught was not up to spec. O'Malley is an excellent striker at range, but he just didn't have the physical strength or technical know-how to keep Merab off him. Sure, it's not like anyone does at 135 pounds right now, but O'Malley had a pretty poor performance, all things considered. Merab Dvalishvili is without question the greatest bantamweight of his era, a cardio machine that smothers his opponents by dragging them into the deepest waters imaginable. We can't fault his pace, pressure, or even his insistence on shooting takedowns over and over again, even if they fail, because it works. But if there's one thing that Merab lacks, it's power in his strikes. The ability to radically change the course of a bout with one big shot. Charles Oliveira's heart is not in question.
Chandler working off of that jab early. Oh! Knocked out for...
But at this stage in his career, after years and years of wars and legendary comebacks, there have to be questions over his ability to take a shot. Oliveira sometimes flops to his back after getting hit as a defensive measure, just to recover. But because of his aggression and offensive style, his opponents tend to find his chin a little too easily these days. Dealing with a wrestler like Khamzat Chimaev is always going to be a problem for most middleweights. And for Dricus du Plessis, to say that he was outgunned in the grappling and wrestling department would be putting it mildly. DDP had been able to power his way through most wrestling situations up to this point, but now his shortcomings on a technical level have become all too clear. Max Holloway might be one of the busiest strikers in the history of the sport, but he is also one of the most hit fighters the UFC has ever seen. Sure, earlier in his career, his granite chin allowed him to take a shot in order to land 2 or 3. But at this point in his career, he needs to improve his striking defense so he doesn't run into major problems when the damage starts to pile up. Justin Gaethje uses his wrestling background to stay on his feet.
Digs deep, finds a way to recover here.
But if you can get him down, he has some pretty glaring holes in his grappling game. Fighters like Charles Oliveira and especially Khabib Nurmagomedov were able to easily exploit this weakness in his game. And though he never fought Islam Makhachev, most analysts would agree that the fight would basically be over as soon as Makhachev got him down.
Still watching what's going on in the cage, yeah.
Ian Machado.
T-Rock goes down. Rodriguez is hurt. He's hurt bad.
Gary certainly has power in his punches and kicks, but at this point in his career, he seems to lack finishing instincts. Or, to be more accurate, he lacks the ability to really impose his offense on his opponents. Sure, he also gets hit a decent amount, but his defense is clearly improving. But Gary's offense doesn't change tempo as much as it should, making his danger levels feel pretty low. Conor McGregor probably just needs an octagon activity right now more than anything else.
Very selfish, Bushinga. McGregor with a huge shot. Bushinga's completely out of it.
But if he were to return and look semi-decent, as unlikely as that seems, we're sure that his cardio issues would still plague him. Even when he was fighting every 6 months, Conor's dynamic offense would wilt pretty severely from the 7 or 8 minute mark onwards. All that fast twitch muscle fiber tends to cost him if he doesn't get the job done early. And for our money, it's a bigger issue than any grappling shortcomings he may have. He tends to get submitted when he's tired, and has shown decent ability on the mat when he's fresh. Michael Chandler is a 3-time Bellator champion, but ever since he joined the UFC, he tends to throw all caution to the wind and sacrifice his brain cells for the benefit of the fans. He fights like a wild man to the point that it inhibits his ability to win. We can call it a fight IQ issue, but it might be more accurate to say that Michael Chandler needs an attitude adjustment. He clearly knows what he wants in the cage, but it's hard not to feel like he might have hurt his long-term prospects in the sport. Jon Jones is in many ways the perfect fighter, but if there's one thing that he never truly had, it was real power in his punches. He's a dynamic striker, of course, but that lack of pop in his shots is definitely a shortcoming in his game. When was the last time you saw Jon drop someone with a punch? There are a few examples in his past, sure, but it's not a major danger that his opponents need to worry about.